Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Avi Havivi. This is Temple Beth Am, and we're hosting, the Green Team is hosting a talk by our very own Temple Beth Am Rabbi Emeritus Joel Rembaum, who's, for a Rabbi Emeritus, he's still a pretty hardworking guy. He's on faculty at the Frankel School, the Masorti Rabbinical School in Germany, and he is the acting rabbi, I think, at Ner Tamid this year. Again, I think. Not your first stint there, I believe. And he's going to be talking this evening about some sources related to Shemitah and the ideas behind them. We'll have some time for Q&A and discussion. Rabbi Schatz has put the source sheet in the chat. I think I will screen share it also so that people who aren't able to open that in the chat will be able to look at the text. Just to look ahead for the month of Cheshvan/October, our sustainability choices topic for the Green Team at Temple Beth Am is going to be eat less meat. And I'm trying to nail down our speakers and dates, but we're going to have two talks, I believe, one by Rabbi Elliot Dorff, who's going to be talking about the Jewish laws and ethics of Tsa'ar Ba'alei Chaim, making sure to not cause animals suffer. We're also going to have a speaker, Melissa Hoffman, from an institution called Farm Forward Jewish Institute Initiative for Animals. I believe she grew up at Temple Beth Am, and some people may know her parents. And she's going to be speaking about the facts of how our chicken, eggs, and meat gets to our plate so that we have a chance to learn more about the animal food chain in the United States. We're going to be having two talks coming up, so keep an eye on the next Green Team newsletter, which I think will be out in about a week or so. Rabbi Rembaum, I'm going to let you take it over, and I'm going to go ahead and screen share the text. And usual protocol, please keep yourself muted if you're, unwrapping candies or chewing loudly. Raise hand if you have something to say, either electronically or wave. And there may be some comments or questions in the chat. I will try to keep an eye on them and feed them to Rabbi Rembaum as it seems appropriate. Rabbi Rembaum, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Habibi. So there's four texts, and so Avi and I were talking, and we're going to pause after each text and the comments on it, and then give you an opportunity to ask questions that way, so we can sort of organize it better and give you time to ask any questions you may have. So the whole purpose behind what I'm trying to get across here is that the sensitivities of caring for the planet and other creatures lie in their very basic biblical texts, and the commentaries on them illuminate the rabbinic perspectives on it. And I find it fascinating because it really, to me, shows how fundamental the whole notion of Shmirat Olam, caring for the world, is embedded within our tradition. And ultimately, we will be taken back to the beginning chapters of Genesis. But I want to begin first with the Shemitah law and to see how it's expressed. And then read, and that's Leviticus chapter 25. And then read in Leviticus chapter 26 the consequences for not following Shemitah. And I find that to be very interesting because it makes some statements about how the world and human events and human activity is tied in with the need to maintain nature properly. So here we are in chapter 25 of Leviticus, and 1 second, I just did something I didn't want to do. That's better. Okay. And let me just read, and then we'll translate. There are translations, as you can see. Many of the commentaries are translated, but there are some that are in Hebrew, and I will be happy to, read and translate them for you. Okay, all right. So we begin. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Bahar Sinai lemor. God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. Okay, Daber el b'nei Yisrael. All right, read the English. Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you enter the land that I assigned you, the land shall observe a Sabbath of the Lord. Okay, Shabbat Ladonai. Keep that in mind, because we're going to take a look at that in just a few more sentences. Okay, then I'll read it because I can just do it more quickly. Okay, 6 years you may sow your fields, 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the yield. Okay, so this whole notion then is very clearly you can prepare and do the what is necessary for a harvest, but on the seventh you have 6 years in which you can do it, right? And where it says the yield, tuvuatah in the Hebrew, you'll notice that is a feminine form at the end of verse 3. The yield, it's not the yield of either of the previous nouns in the statement there. That noun that's a feminine noun. The words that came before it were the kerem and the sadeh, which are masculine, and this is a feminine. So I think what it's saying that that is referring to the eretz, to the land, which is feminine. In other words, but it's a general concluding statement. You can eat what you prepare, what you harvest, and eat it and enjoy it. Okay, but then in the seventh year, now here we go. Shabbat Shabbaton Yehiyeh La'aretz Shabbat Ladonai. The seventh year shall be a Sabbath of complete rest. Some use the word ceasing. I'll get to that in a minute. A Sabbath of the Lord. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. Okay? So you can't do any of that in the seventh year. To me, the key words here, you can see some of them are bolded. Shabbat Shabbaton, right? And Shabbat Ladonai. Shabbat Shabbaton is a term that is used a few times. By the way, all of these texts and the term Shabbat Shabbaton, that word Shabbaton, is only used in what we call the priestly tradition. So all of these documents, and you'll see where they're from, are from that tradition. So it's not surprising. But Shabbat Shabbaton, if you look into a biblical concordance, which I have right here, I just Xeroxed the sheet. What is interesting is that term is used only with regard to three events in the calendar. Shabbat, the seventh day, Yom Kippur, and Shemitah. Shabbat, those two words put together. Shabbaton is used for certain other holidays, but not Shabbat Shabbaton. What is that saying? I'm saying this puts Shemitah in the same category as the holiest days in our calendar, right? There's no question that Shabbat and Yom Kippur are at the highest level of sanctity. And here we are, the seventh year is at that same level. So the land resting during that seventh year, it is the equivalent of what we do by ceasing from labor on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Kippur and on Shabbat. That's the whole point. So that's very important. The word Shabbat, I like the term ceasing better than rest, because in fact, Shabbat means to cease, to desist from doing something. Okay? So it says, God, Shabbat Bayinafash, right? He ceased and he sort of revived his soul, if you will. Okay? All right, so there's two separate concepts there. So Shabbat means to cease. It's a cessation. That's the key point. All right, so the point then that I'm making here is that we now see that the degree to which Shemitah is at a high level of sanctity and seriousness. All right, it's serious. Now, one can look at the whole process of Shemitah in antiquity as really being a kind of, we do that today with crop rotations, where you actually allow parts of a farm to rest, to regain their nutriments, naturally, and then you begin to then you can use it at some point in the near future. So this, I think, is based upon that principle. But you've got to keep in mind also that the Israelites, you're talking agriculture here, this is a foundation of ancient Israelite economy. This is a big deal, okay? And to tell people for a year you cannot farm your land, that's a real big deal, okay? Now, what we read after this is, it doesn't mean that you starve, okay? What it says is, and by the way, in the Torah it says, don't worry, God will make sure that you have abundant harvests, so you can store things. But then it goes on, now we're continuing inside the text. The next line, it says, you shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest, or gather the grapes, etc. Complete rest. So that means this is the aftergrowth of the harvest. Anything that is from the previous year that you've harvested, you can't touch. But look at the next line. You may eat whatever the land during its sabbatical year will produce. In other words, on its own, because it will drop seeds on its own, right? And if the land is strong, if the plants are strong, they will have some level of reproduction of fruit that you can eat because it's on its own, right? It's on its own, but you cannot do anything to enhance that. And your cattle can eat its yield as well. All right. So basically what I'm wanting you to look at here is that the significance, the holiness of the Shemitah year as set forth in this chapter. Now we have the Sforno commentary. Sforno was from Italy. He lived in the 16th century. Very interesting man, because, and I say this because we have a couple of MDs with us on the screen there. Sforno was, in addition to a biblical commentator, he was a philosopher and a physician. And not surprising, he studied Rambam a lot, and he's influenced by Maimonides. So he's 16th century Italy. So here's what he says. You have to refrain totally from working the land, including preparatory work mentioned in detail by our sages. And he gives a source, Avodah Zarah 50, Daf Nun. But then he says, Shabbat, this is interesting. Shabbat Ladonai, to seek out the Lord in some manner. Okay? Now, the editor of the translation, this is Sephariah, had this nice little cute comment, okay, not to play golf. In other words, the idea of not working the farm is not supposed to allow you time to go play golf. It's a day on which you're supposed to spend time strengthening your relationship with God, giving you time to do spiritual work while you're not doing physical work. And in the sense, isn't that what Shabbat is about? So this really is modeled on the Sabbath itself with the same sanctity as the Shabbat. Okay, so that's the foundational text. Any comments, any additions, any questions, please? Yes, Mike.
Yes, I noticed that it talks about planting, harvesting, and pruning. It doesn't say anything about irrigation.
Yeah.
My understanding is that you are permitted to irrigate specifically if it's necessary in order for the plant to survive.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
of course. I mean, but also remember, irrigation is a relatively, I don't know what the nature of irrigation back then was. I'm sure they had wells, and they could draw water up from wells. But a lot of it, remember, in early biblical times was based on, the collection of rainfall, things like that. And rainfall. But they had cisterns. There's no question about that. They probably devised certain ways of allowing water to flow into the gardens. But that is not mentioned, and that's exactly the point. You don't want to kill off the plants, right? You're not obligated to do that, because the point would be that they're around those that remain. Obviously I don't know how all these different plants operate. Some of them probably leave seeds in the ground that can be renewed, okay? And that's probably what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. Some of them, it would appear then, since you have to plant seeds every year, that, you have to, when you till the soil, you uproot the old stuff and make room for the new, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be planting seeds. Okay, so what is the point is, what is there, you don't have to, if there are viable plants still around, you can water them. And but again, you may want to water the land anyway, so to allow whatever seeds have naturally fallen to be able to grow as well. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
Just a quick comment. It's interesting, Sforno, it's interesting that he comments on Shabbat Lashem, because it is a little bit puzzling. What does that mean? It's a Sabbath for God. Does God need it for some reason, or what does it do for God? So he gives an explanation of that, which is that you are the one who ceases, but you're supposed to do something godly while you're ceasing. And I'm thinking also of, the modern thing that we have based on this, which is the sabbatical, like for workers, and generally, like people who take sabbaticals, the understanding is that they're not just lying on the beach. They got the year off because they worked for 6 years, but they're supposed to take the time to do the kinds of things that they didn't have time to do when they were in the regular hustle and bustle of working.
Right, that's right. And not playing golf.
They might play some golf, but they're supposed to be, doing some continuing education or writing an article or working on new job skills or something different that they didn't get to do while they're working.
Exactly. Correct. And I mean, the fact is that rabbis get sabbaticals, hopefully, for that very purpose. I mean, I studied Kabbalah in my sabbaticals, or did research on my Bible projects or other things. And I could grow. There's no question. I always came back, enriched. Mike Harris can tell you, after I studied Kabbalah, I had a whole class on. I became the big expert on Kabbalah, but enough to be able to teach people, to share with people what I have learned and what the books tell us. Get some good books with good commentaries. You can do so that absolutely.
Rabbi Kligfeld came back meditating,
right,
and singing nigunim from his sabbatical.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And it's exactly what it should be. Very good. Thank you. Well spoken, sir. All right. Now let's go to Leviticus 26. All right. So now we're really in the midst of just got to scroll. There you go. We're in the midst of a very challenging part of Vayikra. These are the curses, that both Devarim and Vayikra end their presentation of covenant law with the blessings and the curses. So here's some of this. These are the curses that will befall the people if they fail to follow the covenant. And look what we find. Okay. All right. So, and you I will scatter among the nations. Okay. All right. And I will unsheath the sword against you. Your land shall become a desolation and your cities a ruin. Oh my. Okay. But here is the kicker. Az tirtzeh haaretz et shabtoteha. Then the land shall make up for its Sabbath years throughout the time that it is desolate, and you are in the land of your enemies. Then shall the land rest and make up for its Sabbath years. Okay? And And then it's repeated in verse 35. Throughout the time that it is desolate, it shall observe the rest. It did not observe in your Sabbath years while you were dwelling upon it. Okay? In other words, the people, the Israelites, through their neglect of Shemitah, that was part of the reason why they were sent into exile. It wasn't simply because it was violating God's code, for sure, but also they violated the rights of the land. And therefore, they have to be out of the country so that the land could rest. And this interesting word, hirtzat, 1 second. Yeah. Et shabtoteha. That verb, reish tzadi he in this context, means to redeem or actually to be paid back. To pay back. It's paid back its rest. Or it pays back God, so to speak, the land's obligation to God to have rested. But it's a sense of a restorative act. And the land, you get it. I don't have to belabor the point. This is a very powerful statement if you think about the significance of this. Okay, and I think this is a verse that is often overlooked because of we read all these the bad things that are going to happen to the people, plagues and enemies and this and that. And then these verses are tucked in here. And it's to me, when I first noticed this, not yesterday, sure, but it was just really struck me. Well, that's the point, you see. Human action results in a corruption of the land, in a destruction of the land, right? Because of our neglect to take care of the land, right? We have got part of our punishment is getting us out of there so it can repair itself from the damage that we did by neglect. Sound familiar? I mean, there are a lot of people today who, tell us that, the world will survive without us. Okay? And, in the end, we will suffer the consequences. And our not being around may actually be good for the land because, it will be able to become its natural self. So, but I'm not an expert in the field and I can't comment on that, but I'm sure we've all heard that. But that's what this is saying. It's prescient. It really is prescient. And what I love here is the connection between human activity and, what the fate of the land, shall we say. To me, this is very clear. That's why I really felt we had to do this. Okay, so now we're going to look at some other commentaries. So here's Ibn Ezra on verse 34. So it says her Sabbaths. It's not only the sabbatical years, but it's also, and the Jubilee, the 50th year as well, which is the restoration of land. That's interesting. The Jubilee is not simply a sabbatical. It's a restoration of land to its former owners. So this is actually a human-related thing, ownership of the land. And the whole concept of the restoration was to prevent families to falling into abject poverty, so that they needed to, this way they get their land back. And the owners have had plenty of time to reap harvests and to reap the benefits. Now it goes back to the other family. We're not actually sure whether the Yovlot were followed. All right, there's no concrete evidence that it was actually. We don't know. We just don't know. Shemitah, we know, was. It's still followed today, as you know, in Eretz Yisrael. And these are only relating to Eretz Yisrael, by the way. But it's an interesting, anyway. And here it says, similarly it is written, the land had paid her Sabbaths. Okay, this is the whole point. All right. Now, again, Sforno, Az tirtzah haaretz. The debt owed it will be paid, he says. The debt that is owed the land will be paid. Okay, Shabtoteha, he says, he follows Ibn Ezra here, the Shemitah and Yovel years which had not been observed. And then he says the following, it's interesting. Chronicles 2 mentions that the 70 years of exile correspond to the years referred to. Remember, 70 is 10 times 7, right? So it's the Shemitah cycles. That's what he's suggesting to us. And finally, you have the Aderet Eliyahu. Aderet Eliyahu is a biblical commentary by Elijah, the Vilna Gaon, the great Vilna Gaon, who lived, of course, in Poland, in Lithuania, actually. He lived in the town of Vilna. That's why he's called the Vilna Gaon. Isn't that a brilliant observation? Anyway, but, he's a giant. This man is a giant in his field. Comments on Talmud, on Bible, and he apparently was a mathematician, but he was an arch enemy, of the Hasidim. He was a leading figure of the Mitnagdim, the people who opposed the Hasidic movement in its early years, and he lived in the 18th century. And but he also, ironically, was an expert in Kabbalah. He read the Zohar. He knew the Zohar backwards and forwards. It was almost as if he's saying, know thine enemy, because, Hasidut is influenced by Kabbalah. So, but it's amazing. Guy was a genius. Not apparently a very nice guy, though, but, well, sometimes you can't help that. All right, so here's what he said. So, Ani amarti lachem shetihiyu zorim sheish umashmitim echad bishvil shetedu shehaaretz shelihi. Okay, I told you that you plant for 6 years and have Shemitah for 1 year, so that you should know that the land belongs to me. Atem lo asitem came, but you didn't do that. Lechach tigalu mimena bihi tashmit me'eleha kol shmita shehi chayevet li. Okay, interesting now. So you will be exiled from it, and she will make up for all the shmitot that she owes me. Right? Shene'amar az tiritzah haaretz et shabtoteha kol yemei hishama tishbot. Okay, tishbot. So because then she will pay me. That's what he's saying. So it's not just an insult to the land. It's an insult to God. It's an insult to God. Because God has a system here, how he wants his land to operate. And what right do you, who are working the land, have to tell him or to violate the principles on the basis of which he runs his land? Okay? So when it says, Hashamayim Shemaim Ladonai, Va'aretz Natan Livnei Adam, right? The heavens is God's and the land he gave to people. It doesn't mean the people have the right to do whatever they want. Okay? That you can see it right here. People are not supposed to do whatever they want to the land. They have to follow certain basic standards and principles. In our case, from the perspective of Torah, what God says to do with the land. Because it's not ours. He gave it to us. We'll see what it means in a minute. But he gave it to us with conditions, not unconditionally. And that's why, again, I find this whole notion of the holiness of this whole process. Remember, holiness means it's engaged with the essential essence of God. Right? The essential essence of God. And that's what's going on here. This is godly stuff. It's godly stuff. Okay?
Rabbi Rembaum?
Yes. It's time to ask questions. Vered, go ahead. Unmute.
But now, okay. I'm actually not going to ask a question, but have a suggestion on the writings. A little bit in grammar, instead of saying tirtzeh haaretz, which a little bit doesn't make sense if you truly understand the words. But I would like to suggest to put it in a nifal form in passive, which means that the land will be accepting, will be getting all the Shabbatot, all the Shemitah that we own to the Shabbat. So it's the same letters, but if you change the vowels a little bit, you change it to a different form.
Right, that makes sense, but I'm reading now from verse 34. It says, Az tirtzeh ha'aretz.
Yeah, which makes no sense. If you will say teratzeh ha'aretz, it's the same thing.
I would have thought the same thing, right? But that's why I think they're thinking that, remember, there's two different interpretations here. Maybe that's what motivated this last one. If it's tirtzeh, that means it owns, she's paying. The land is paying God back. That's what he says. Shehi chayabet li. You see, that's what and he probably picks up on that. The other commentators were fitting more with what you were saying. But he was Dafka looking at the Pa'al form there. Right?
In a way.
That's the way, that's the Nikud.
The Nikud, but you can change it and then it makes sense.
I agree.
But,
no. I'm saying what you say is what the other commentators said.
Yes.
That's why, if you heard me, I even got a little confused myself, because when I was reading it, I was saying, wait a second, something's not right here. Correct. Yeah. Good observation. Yeah, that's correct. Yes. Mike Harris.
I noticed from what you were saying that the sabbatical is for God's benefit, it seems to be. But I see that the relationship between the sabbatical year and the Jubilee year is interesting, because that ensures that in the year that the land goes back to the prior owner, it goes back in its refreshed form. It's immediately after a Shemitah year.
That's correct. Yes, that's right. Well, I said before that the bringing the land, giving the land back is more of an ethical. It's human stuff, right? Not human God, right? And you're right. Absolutely, that's absolutely correct. Yes, I think we have to say, as is many cases in our tradition, the dual vector of the vertical and the horizontal operates simultaneously. Because in the end, even the observance of the Shemitah, in a certain sense, is to the advantage of the farmer, because you'll get a refreshed land, right? Mm-hmm. And if he keeps working it, he can deplete the land to the point where it doesn't work for him anymore. So, I mean, either way, the benefits go both ways, right? And I think the cumulative effect of this is that indeed that's the way it should be viewed, both vertically and horizontally. Very okay. Now we're going to go back to some of the sources that actually define what our obligations to the land are. All right, and then here's one that I've used in certain instances. And a lot of people, it seems to have not been picked up that much, although we're going to see in a moment that some of the commentators say some things similar to what I was looking at. All right, so now we're going to Genesis chapter 1, right? The creation of the human being. All right, so the humans are created, man and woman, right? That's verses 26, 27. And now God says, Vayivarech, are you with me? All right, the second page, Genesis 1:28. Vayvarchotem Elohim vayomer lehem Elohim. God blessed them and said, Pru urvu umilu et haaretz v'kishuha uredu b'digat hayam v'fashamayim v'chol chaya haromes et al haaretz. Okay, be fruitful and multiply, fill the land, rule it, conquer, you could say, but take dominion over it, and rule the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and all the animals that crawl on the land. Okay. So that's the human beings are given this privilege. Okay. And my interpretation, by the way, is in the context of this statement in Genesis chapter 1, being created in the image of God means just that. Create other human beings and create a mass of people large enough to be able to rule all the other creatures. Because if you saw up above, the reason why I talk specifically here about the birds of the heavens and the fish of the sea, they are swarming creatures, right? There's a lot of them. So this whole notion of maintaining and ruling, but we're in a moment we're going to see what that actually means. Okay, what does ruling entail? All right, the notion that we can do with it whatever we want is not correct. And that is the point that I want to make now in the next couple of verses. Because what does it say? All right? God says, it kol esav zorea zera, asher al pnei haaretz, vet kol ha'etz asher bo pri etz, zorea zara, lachem yeh lo. Okay, I'm giving you all grass that grows seeds on the face of the earth, and all trees that grow fruit and have seeds. They shall be for you to eat. Right? So he's talking to the farmers. Right? You plant wheat and barley, you grow figs and pomegranates and dates, right? And you eat. Okay? Notice what's missing. No flesh, no meat, no eggs, no cheese. Folks, we were created vegans. That's what it says. Correct? Correct. Okay. Now, v'chol chayat haaretz, v'chol of hashamayim, v'chol romeis haaretz, all the birds, all the animals, land animals, and the birds, and everything that crawls, everything that has living spirit in it. You guys got all the green grass to eat, and that's the way it should be. That's the way it was. So the animals eat the grass, we get the fruits and the grains. And that's it. So what does it have to do with ruling? This is what we have. This is the order we have to maintain. That's the point. This is how the world is going to run. You can't eat from those animals. That's not the way it was created. We're going to see some interesting comments on how that developed in a moment. Okay? But that's what it says. So humans cannot do whatever they want. We have to maintain that order. That's why it's there. That's why it comes right after the reference to ruling. You can take care of yourselves, but you got to take care of the animals. Okay, so you can't create farms with grains and fruits that the other animals won't eat. You got to leave land for them to eat too. Okay, so to me, this is a very significant statement about what it means to rule. You follow the prescription that God set forth, as is the same case with Shemitah. This is the law, and this is the way you're going to follow it. Okay, now let's look at some of the commentaries. So here's Rashi. Very interesting what he says. So, b'chol chayat haaretz, all the beasts on the land, okay? Scripture places cattle and beasts on a level with human beings with regard to food, and did not permit Adam to kill any creature and eat its flesh, but all alike were to eat herbs. But in the era of the sons of Noah, when it began, after the flood, he permitted them to eat meat, right? Because it says in Genesis 9, every moving thing that lives for you may be food, even as the herb that I permitted the first man, I give you everything. Okay? So it changed after the flood. One of the reasons is that I think it's the same reason why you have to have a pidyon haben. Why does God own all the firstborn? Because God saved them from the 10th plague. Why can Noah and the descendants of Noah eat the animals? Because Noah saved them from the flood. So that's the logic here. Humans gain a right to certain things because they saved certain things. The same way that God got the right to certain things because he saved them. See the parallel? So I think that's what's going on here. But it's only after this that humans can eat. All right, we're not finished with this. We're going to come back to it in a minute, and you're going to figure out in a minute. We'll figure out why it was that that was done. All right. In fact, this is right here. Here we go. Why are the animals punished along with the humans in the flood? Why could they eat after the flood? Well, I just answered that. Human sin caused animals to become subject to death. That's what he's saying, and that's what the Chanukah Torah. Who is the Chanukah Torah? I didn't know. I had to check it. So I will now tell you. This is, you ready for this? Abraham Yoshua Heschel. Abraham Joshua Heschel. Born 1520. Died 1560. Krakow, Poland. That's the original. The Heschel we know and love is many generations later. I don't know if he's from the same family. Could be, because he did come from a Sid family. And the interesting thing is, this guy was a leading rabbinic figure in Poland. So that in Krakow. Okay, that's who this is. Okay? All right. So here's what he says. All right, so Kodem Hachet, before the sin of eating the fruit. That's where we are, all right? Lo hayam mita klal ba'olam, af b'behemot v'chayot. Okay? There was no death at all in the world. Even the animals didn't die. Okay? K'te'it b'midrash Yalkut Sefer Iyov, as it is in the Yalkut Shimoni on the book of Job. That's what it says. Rabbanan Amrei, the rabbis say, Kevan she'achla chava mipri ha'ilan, once Eve, sorry ladies, here she is again, once Eve ate from the fruit of the tree, he'echila ta'behemot, v'ta'chayot, v'ta'ofot, she fed all the animals and the birds. Okay? נמצא משהו מזה, דאילו לא אכלו בהמות וחיות ועופות מעץ הדעת, היו חיים וקיימים לעולם. Had they not eaten from that, they would have lived forever. Interesting. Because there was no death before this.
Rabbi Rembaum, have you ever heard that midrash anywhere before about the animals eating from the tree?
No. Have you?
No.
Never have. But apparently it's in the Yalkut Shimoni on Job. I can't say that I read the Yalkut on Job. I don't even know if I have the Yalkut on Job. Well, I think I know where I can find it, actually. I'll look and see if I can find it, yes. But I'll tell you, I mean, that whole point is, it answers a question, right? Human beings were the ones who sinned with the eating of the fruit, right? Why should the animals suffer? Right? Why they're innocent. Okay? The rabbis explain that the force of the sinfulness of the human beings, not just from eating the fruit, but from the subsequent generations of violence and evil that human beings perpetrated, was so powerful that it actually infected the animals as well. Okay? And the animals were not behaving among themselves. That I've read. That's rabbinic midrash that I'm aware of. Okay, but this is very novel. It takes it all the way back to good old Eve. So I apologize for those of us who view Eve as being made the bogey person too frequently here. But that's what it says. But the whole point, but you understand the reason for the explanation. It's the same thing. Why was it that, we read in Maftir Yonah, in the book of Jonah, who made Teshuvah in Nineveh? Now I'm talking about, right? The Ninevites, right? Jonah goes and says, in 40 days, Nineveh is going to be destroyed. So the king says, we must repent before God. And they put on sackcloth and ashes. And they repented. And God forgave them because their penitence was sincere. All right? Who wore the sackcloth and ashes? The humans and the animals. Read it. The animals. So this notion that somehow human sin can infect even animals, right? Who are the miasma of the sinfulness is such, it's like a disease that gets absorbed into the innocent animals, which shows again the impact of human failure and its impact on innocent creatures. Well, we know that's true, right? We know that's true. How many species on the earth get killed every year because of human activity? Well, here you have it. The principle that human evil is such that it can impact creatures that are not more than merely the humans. So I find this to be, forgetting about Eve and all that stuff, I find it to be very, very telling. Okay. All right. So then, Gur Aryeh basically says the same thing. So I'm going to skip that. All right. Now, the final Torah verse that we're going to look at is on page 3. And this is Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. I'm sure you'll recognize it. And there's some very, very nice comments on this. Okay. So, Vayikach Adonai Elohim et ha'adam, vaynichehu began Eden, la'avda ulishomra. Lord God took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to till it and to tend it. Were there any questions on the previous discussion? Okay. All right. So, I mean, this is no secret. This is right. And the whole point is, that's the point. Yes, he can work it. He can benefit from it. But at the same time, he is responsible to take care of it. It's blatant. It's as clear as the nose on my face, right? It's obvious. That's the point. But here's good comments on it. So here's Ibn Ezra, right? Ibn Ezra, Spain, 12th century, the great Ibn Ezra, great commentator on the Bible and philosopher. So to till it, therefore refers to the garden of whose fruit he ate. It was not only after he sinned that he had to eat grass of the ground. In other words, he ate from the fruit trees in the garden, right? He was allowed to do that. Afterwards, then he had to eat the grass of the ground, interestingly, i.e. make bread out of wheat. To till it means to water it. To keep it means to guard the garden so that no animals enter therein and befoul it. No animals enter and befoul the garden. Okay? I'm not going to get into descriptions of what this is. It could mean that I don't know. Remember the animals could eat things. They were there after God created them, right? But they could not enjoy the garden. That was just for people. So Ibn Ezra is saying, right? And they would befoul the garden. All right. Keep it clean, right? Don't let it become polluted with animal things. Okay? That's what we're told all the time. Stop polluting. Well, there you are, right there. Okay? Then, Bechor Shor, also 12th century, one of the radical Pashtanim in the school of Rashi, who took the reading of the plain meaning of the text, the search of the plain meaning of the text, as opposed to Midrash, really very, very far-fetched. No, that's the wrong term. Far-reaching in his interpretation for a 12th century French commentator. Okay? So here it means Gam et ha'adam natan sham la'avdal shomra, put the human being there to work it and to guard it. The land, what does he have to take care of? Ota adama shehagan sham, the land in which where the garden is. B'choza mitikun hagan. This has to do with maintaining the garden. Maintaining the garden. Okay? Not destroying it, not abusing it, maintaining the garden. Okay? Now, very interesting Radak, David Kimchi, southern France, 13th century. He's from the Kimchi family were very famous. They were philosophically oriented, very, very astute Bible commentators. The word lavda refers to constructive labor, furthering the growth and fruit-bearing capability of the trees, whereas the word l'shamra refers to taking of preventative measures to counter invasion of the garden by predators and other measures to prevent its deterioration. Okay? So it's even improving. So you can, improve the productivity of the fruits. This is okay. But you cannot allow the garden to deteriorate in the process. You got to find the balance. Balance. Very important. And protect it. Our sages reading into this expression also a moral ethical teaching, understanding the word avda as the dedication to study of God's commandments. Avodah means worship. Study is a form of worship for a philosophically oriented thinker. So therefore, it means this is a form of reverence of God. Okay? Study God's commandments on the basis of which you take care of the land, whereas the expression l'shamar refers to carrying out the commandments in practice. Carrying them out in practice. Study and practice both. And in that way, you will be blessed by a fruitful garden, and the garden will be best because its fruitfulness will be enhanced and protected. Then Al-Sheikh is 16th century, and he was born in the Ottoman Empire, ended up in Sfat. He studied with the Ari, and among his students was Chaim Vital, disciple of the Ari of Luria. So this guy was really deep into the Kabbalistic direction of the Tzfat in the 16th century. All right, so here, very interesting. Hine Katavnu Ma'amar Razal, we wrote about the statement of the rabbis. La'avda elu mitzvot aseh, l'shamra mitzvot lo ta'aseh. So to work the land is to fulfill positive commandments. To guard it is to fulfill negative commandments. Okay? So they say, al yedei mitzvot aseh, yurak shefa elyon umashke et atzei eden umatzmichan. By virtue of following the positive commandments, the heavenly abundance will be opened up, and it will, in other words, the rains and all the goodness from heaven will come up and will water the garden and cause them to blossom. Okay? Be careful not to violate the negative commandments. Shomer, and listen to this. Shomra milhita rev zar. Keep away something strange, something alien that can come in and get in the mix. What is it? Koach hatum'ah, the power of defilement, bagan, in the garden. Bibechinat hityachsuta el nafsho, by virtue of its relationship to his soul. Now the question is it the soul of the garden or the soul of the human? Or both? Doesn't say. But the point is, you've got to keep out defilement from the garden. It's got to be kept pure. Pure. Okay. No oil spills in the garden, right? No poisoning of plants or poisoning of us through, pesticides that are put on in irresponsible ways, and irresponsible pesticides, okay, and so forth. Don't spoil it. Don't defile it. It's sacred. It's sacred. Okay. Chizkuni is, this is very interesting. He is from France, 13th century, has Chizkiyahu ben Manoach, Chizkiyahu. That's sort of repetitive. Animals would trample it. Protection. Or HaChaim is Chaim ben Moshe ibn Attar from Morocco, early 18th century, a Moroccan and a great posek. Okay, so here, very interesting. The use of terms to work and to protect in connection with Gan Eden is perfectly justified. At the same time, when God placed Adam in Gan Eden, Adam was able to see how his positive actions contributed to the well-being of the garden. Once he'd been expelled, he was denied the ability to see the results of his activities. We are blind. We just don't see the results of our activities. Interesting, isn't it? Or we choose not to see the results of our own activities. The spiritual part, however, was not denied the chance to accumulate good deeds and eventually see the results in the hereafter. Okay, we got to wait for the hereafter for us to reclaim the benefit of our being able to see certain things, and those are spiritual things. But in the meantime, we are not able to see the results of our mistakes. I would say that applies to a lot of people, unfortunately, right now. That's an editorial comment. Any comments? Questions? Yes. Dr. Ozer, please unmute.
I think it's just very interesting telling how the responsibility is really man's. And all of your texts are, in order to create this fine balance, we were given the ability to make decisions, or the responsibility to, and we screwed up, really. But in the end, it's our responsibility. It's not the animal's responsibility.
Right.
I think that's very telling and very well illustrated by what you're saying. And
of course, exactly. Right. I remind you, Ozer, remember when God, here's my favorite trick question. Okay, some of you have heard it before, so maybe you'll remember the answer. Okay. Well, this is chapter 2 of Genesis, right? So remember, God put the man alone, and he says it's not good for the man to be alone, right? So therefore, God made who? Whom? Whom did God make?
Animals.
The animals. Thank you, Michael Harris. You remembered. You read the Torah. Not Eve. His first attempt was the animals to make an Ezer Kenegdo, an Ozer, right? An Ozeret.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
Yes, the animals didn't work. By the way, that shows you that God actually made 2 mistakes, and he admitted it. And he learned from it, right? He made the man alone. He says, Loto, that's not good, right? And then he made the animals. He says he didn't find a helpmate. So he finally realized he's got to take something out of the man and use that to create the woman, and then he'll have a helpmate. Okay, so God learns. This is a good thing. But God screws up occasionally. Okay. All right. Final vision. On this, we're going to end in a very hopeful and beautiful tone. Isaiah chapter 11, the famous prophecy. Yes, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard lie down with the kid. Not a child, a kid, baby goat. The calf, the beast of prey, and the fatling together. Fatling is a fat little animal, with a little boy to herd them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together, and the lion like the ox shall eat straw. A babe shall play over a viper's hole, and an infant pass his hand over an adder's den. In all my sacred mount, nothing evil or vile shall be done. For the land, and this is talking about Eretz Yisrael, shall be filled with devotion to the Lord as water covers the sea. This is the end of days vision of Isaiah chapter 11. And it goes back to where things were before that we ate from the fruit, right? It's back to Gan Eden, and even a different vision of Gan Eden, right? With children playing amongst all of these animals who are kind and loving to one another. Everybody eats grass. It's harmonious. It's clear. It's clean. It's untrammeled. It's undefiled. It's wonderful. And it was a dream. And so maybe someday the dream will come true. Any questions, comments? Okay.
I have a quick comment. The midrash that the animals ate from the fruit of the tree is from Genesis Rabbah 19:5.
Oh, really?
I found that out by doing a Google search, which led me to a Wikipedia article which cited it. Saying actually that Eve gave to all the animals to eat. The only one who refused to eat in the midrash was the phoenix, which is why all other animals die, but the phoenix is reborn from its ashes, according to the midrash of Genesis Rabbah 19:5.
Wow. Where does that phoenix arise from the ashes originally come from, though? It's not, that must be an ancient myth of some. Now we got to check that up on. Ask the Googler Rav. The Googler Rav knows a lot of stuff. Great rabbi. I think he's got a Shmitah from Hebrew Union College. I'm not sure. No, never mind. That was Dafkanik. Okay, because we're all conservative rabbis here, so what are we going to do? It's okay. All right. Anyhow, a pleasure, my dear friends. So I decided to take this tack because I think we have demonstrated that our tradition understands the mutuality of these relationships, the need for humans to be caring of all the creatures, and the maintaining a balance. We can work the land, but at the same time, we have to preserve and protect it and not abuse it and allow it to become defiled, weakened in any way. And we should keep the tuma of carbon and all kinds of pollutants out of the picture altogether. I wish you all a happy Hanukkah, or I would say a happy Mar Cheshvan. You know why it's called Mar Cheshvan? It's Mar means bitter. That's not the original reason, but that's what the rabbis say, because there's no holidays in it. We congregational rabbis, right, Rabbi Schatz, say, Baruch Hashem, no holidays, just
best month of the year.
Celebration, right?
And those of us who are not say, oh, I got to work 5 days a week now, every week, 5 days consecutively. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. On that happy note.
Rabbi Rembaum, thank you very much for sharing with us and teaching us this evening. Thank you. Everyone keep their eyes peeled for more Green Team talks and classes as we go ahead.
Thursday with Rabbi Klickfeld, right?
Oh, Rabbi Klickfeld's twice a month, lunchtime, Thursday at lunchtime, every other Thursday class is starting this Thursday at noon, and that's probably in the Beth Am calendar somewhere. Thank you, Rabbi Schatz.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. Okay, Good night, all.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.